Okay, so now we're going to talk about the roof and the guttering. So basically, we'd addressed it earlier in the minimum property standards, but once again, if it has less than 3 years of life left on the roof, you want to call that out. You want to look at the valleys and the edges and the caps and everything about the roof system and just make sure it's functioning properly, keeping the house weather tight, and that the gutters are functioning properly. They're not filled with debris, and they're letting the water flow away from the home and not just dumping it down into the foundation. Some of the common areas where you're going to have damage is around roof boots, on the edges where there's flashing and there's valleys. A lot of chimney flashing is a huge issue. As you can see down here where there's some rotten wood, lots of times if the roof isn't built properly or if there's a weird design, it can trap water and cause it to deteriorate. These valleys are also areas of damage. And then there's like storm damage or things that are, trees are ruining the roof, those kind of things. So just look at the roof, and if it needs fixed or repaired, mark it down. Check all those areas that are common for deterioration. Chimneys and venting. Once again, the chimneys, they have to function. They don't have to be perfect, but they have to function. FHA likes to see a cap on a chimney, so the water's not getting in there. They like to see it's secure, so it's all tuck pointed and it's not falling down, it's not all chipping and breaking up. And then with venting, if the roof isn't vented properly, then a lot of times what happens is you get mold and you get the roof is too hot, so it starts warping the wood and basically wearing the roof out in a much quicker fashion than it should be. So if it's not vented properly, which means the venting from the eaves where the soffit is all the way up through the top of the roof. So check for that. If the roof is not vented properly, it could fail or cause mold and other damages. Here's some pictures. You can see there's ridge vent, there's caps on the chimneys. You can see this chimney's deteriorating a little bit. You'd want to call that out. Around these roof vents, that's a pretty common area. And then here's a picture of the venting from the soffit. So basically, just look at everything. Once again, this is not to nitpick the building apart. It's to just make sure it is functioning properly, it's working, it's not deteriorated beyond its useful life, and it's just functioning. And it's health and safety. There's no health and safety issues that could cause somebody a problem to get hurt. Okay, this is fairly rare as far as lightning protection and seismic bracing. Obviously, most of the country doesn't have earthquake or seismic issues, but there's some areas of the country that, there's building codes, like on the West Coast, where they have to brace buildings a certain way in order to make sure that they're safe and sound and they meet code. And if there's an area of the country where, lightning's prevalent, you'll want to, look at that stuff and just make sure it's all functioning and it's proper. This is more of a local thing versus a national thing, but if you run into it and you're doing consulting in those areas, then you got to pay attention. You got to know what you're looking for. As you can see, if the building is not braced properly or protected properly from seismic activity, it could fail. So this is more of a building code issue, but if it comes up, you have to address it. The last thing you want to do is have a wobbly house in the middle of a area that's prone to earthquakes. Okay, the next section we're going to talk about is the building interiors. Okay, what you're looking for in the interiors. It's kind of the same stuff you're looking for in the exterior, except you're talking the heating, the cooling, the drywall, the doors, the flooring, the sinks, the toilets, the faucets, all of those things, handrails, are health and safety issues, and everything, once again, needs to function. It needs to be safe. Okay, we're going to talk about structural systems, which we call like framing in particular. If the framing is bad or cut or rotten, you'll need to address it. If the structure is failing, whether the piers or the foundation or the sill plate, you'll want to call that out too. So when we talk about structural systems, we're talking about all of the things that are holding load, and the load needs to be held properly, and the type of construction needs to bear that load and meet code. So if you see on this picture down here, they cut the floor joist just out to get the plumbing in. That's a no-no. That would need to be fixed. You need to call that out. If you look at the picture here in the middle, the floor is all rotten around the toilet ring where obviously water was getting in there and rotting the wood. So that would need to be called out and need to be replaced. If you look down here in the bottom right, there's water in the crawl space. These piers could be failing. If you look up here, this pier's failing. There's load on this. It's just going to fail, and it's going to cause the structure to deteriorate and to fail. So all of those type of things need to be called out because there certainly can become health and safety issues. And it's just common sense. If the building's going to fail, it's going to fall down, pieces are going to fail, then they need to be fixed. And that's certainly a health and safety issue and a minimum property standard. Insulation is another one. Headers are another one. Like if you look at this window here in the middle, there's no proper header, so that load is not properly braced, and it's gonna fail. It's gonna break the window, and it's just not framed properly. You need to have proper insulation so that the home can be heated and cooled properly. You don't want any loose wires, trip hazards, just health and safety stuff. If you've got rotten boards, you definitely want to make sure they've been repaired or replaced or sister studded, and they're functioning and they're braced up properly. So what do you need to remember for the structural systems? Now, I always look for the load points. Make sure that all of the load is adequately supported, and whatever supporting it is functioning properly, whether it's piers, joist, basement walls, headers, rafters, those type of things. Make sure the building has proper insulation. Sometimes you can't see it because it's behind the walls, but anything you can see, you'd want to make sure it's properly insulated. Proper ventilation, same thing, we talked about that earlier, but the house has to breathe. You want moisture control so you're not getting a bunch of moisture and water in places and causing mold and deteriorating the structure. Once again, look for any health and safety hazards and any rotten or deteriorating structures, anything that can fail. If you address those, call them out, get them on the bid, you should be in good shape.